Ever get that, like, weird feeling that reality is, I don't know, a little bit off, like we're all just stuck in some giant video game or something?
Hmm. Yeah.
Well, today we are diving deep, deep into a paper that really takes that thought, that what if, to, like, a whole other level.
Okay.
It's called Are You Living in a Computer Simulation?
Oh, wow.
By Nick Bostrom. So get ready, folks, because things are about to get seriously meta.
It really is fascinating how this idea, the whole living in a simulation thing
Mhm.
went from like pure science fiction
Yeah.
to a serious topic that people are actually discussing, in philosophy and science.
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, Bostrom's paper is like the, I guess, the jumping off point for a lot of these discussions.
Yeah.
So to get us started, he brings up this crazy concept he calls substrate independence.
Okay.
What is that all about?
Well, it's basically the idea that consciousness, that experience of having a mind, like your thoughts, your feelings, that sense of manyness,
Mhm.
it might not actually be limited to, our physical brains. Like picture this, a super advanced computer, right? But it's running a program so complex, so intricate that it actually becomes aware.
So it's kind of like how we figured out how to fly without having to perfectly copy birds. We
Yeah.
use different hardware, planes instead of
Uh,
feathers, right? But we get to the same result.
exactly. We might not need to like perfectly replicate every single neuron and synapse
Yeah.
to, recreate consciousness.
Hmm.
Bostrom's not saying it's a sure thing, just that a computer, with the right programming could be conscious.
Hmm.
That's enough to, set the stage for his argument.
Okay, so the potential is there, but how do we get from there to like actually living in a simulation?
All right, well, imagine this.
Okay.
Future civilizations, so advanced, right?
Hmm.
They make our technology look like stone tools. Bostrom calls them post-human civilizations.
Hmm.
They've got this computing power that is just
Unbelievable.
mind-boggling, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, give me like a sense of scale here. Just how powerful are we talking?
Okay, try to picture a supercomputer the size of a sugar cube,
Whoa.
but it can crank out 10 to the power of 21 instructions every second.
A sugar cube.
That's a 1 with 21 zeros after it,
Yeah.
a number so big it's practically meaningless to us. Or how about a computer the size of an entire planet, doing 10 to the power of 42 operations per second? Now, to put that into perspective,
Okay.
some scientists think that simulating a human mind would take like somewhere between 10 to the 14th and 10 to the 17th operations per second.
Okay.
Do you see the difference?
So these post-human computers, they could run tons of these mind simulations at the same time,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Countless simulations.
But why? Why would they do that?
That's where it gets really, really interesting.
Mm.
What if, and this is a big what if these super advanced beings wanted to run what Bostrom calls ancestor simulations?
Ancestor simulation.
Imagine simulated worlds populated by beings just like us, recreating our history, maybe even our individual lives.
Whoa, hold on. You're saying there could be countless simulated versions of us out there right now, totally clueless that we're living in a computer program. It's like the Matrix, but hopefully without the killer robots.
Right. And that leads us to the heart of Bostrom's argument, what's often called the trilemma. He
Okay.
gives us three possibilities, and he says at least one of them has to be true.
All right. Hit me with these possibilities.
Number one, and it's a bit of a downer,
Okay.
almost no civilizations like ours actually make it to that post-human level.
Hmm.
We wipe ourselves out before we get there.
So it's game over before we even reach the final boss. Not exactly a happy thought. What's the next possibility?
Proposition two, maybe post-human civilizations just aren't interested in running these ancestor simulations.
Okay.
Maybe they think it's unethical, or they've just moved on to, bigger and better things.
I mean, if you've got the power to create entire universes, maybe simulating your ancestors starts to feel a little,
Basic.
yeah, basic, like watching old home videos after you've explored the entire galaxy.
Exactly. Their values, their priorities might be so different from ours that we can't even, grasp what they find interesting.
Right.
And that leaves us with the third possibility, the one that's, well, the most mind-blowing.
Let me guess. We're living in a simulation.
You got it. Proposition 3. Almost all beings with human-like experiences are living in simulations.
Mm.
Basically, there are so many simulated realities out there that the odds of us being in the original universe are, well, they're incredibly small.
So which one seems most likely to you, dear listener? It's the question that's been bugging philosophers, scientists, and now hopefully you ever since Bostrom first proposed it.
Now, Bostrom isn't saying he knows the answer.
Right.
He's just saying logically, one of these has got to be true. And each one of these possibilities has some pretty wild implications.
Yeah. And we're going to unpack all those implications, starting with that first proposition, the possibility of extinction before we even reach our full potential.
Right.
Yeah, that's a cheery thought.
Let's get into it. All right, so let's take a closer look at that first proposition, the one that says humanity doesn't make it to that post-human stage.
Right. We go extinct before we even reach level 2 scenario.
Yeah, it kind of forces us to think about some pretty unsettling possibilities.
Yeah.
Like what could actually stop us from, reaching that level of technological advancement?
Yeah, what are the biggest threats to our long-term survival as a species? I mean, are we talking asteroids, nuclear war,
Yeah.
climate change, or maybe something even weirder like, I don't know, a robot uprising?
Those are definitely possibilities, yeah. But Bostrom, he highlights something else, something even more fascinating.
Okay.
The potential dangers of advanced technology itself.
Oh, wow.
He specifically talks about nanotechnology as a possible existential risk.
Nanotechnology. Oh, wait, you mean those tiny robots that you hear about that could revolutionize medicine and manufacturing and all that? How could those be dangerous?
Well, imagine like microscopic robots, right? But they can self-replicate,
Okay.
and they're able to consume any matter they come into contact with. They could be programmed with a very simple instruction to break down matter into its basic components and then use those components to just create more copies of themselves.
So it's like kind of like a chain reaction, but on a microscopic level.
Precisely. And, in the wrong hands or even just because of some unforeseen accident, this kind of technology could spiral totally out of control, consuming, everything in its path, forests, oceans, cities, even us.
Yeah.
And the result, a planet reduced to, well, just gray goo.
That is a terrifying thought. And it's not just nanotechnology, right? I mean, there are probably countless other ways that we could accidentally self-destruct with technology we haven't even invented yet. It's like we're playing with fire, but we don't really fully understand how powerful it is.
That's the scary part. The technologies that could actually lead to our extinction are probably beyond our current understanding. But let's switch gears for a second and think about a more optimistic scenario, shall we say. Proposition 2, the idea that, these post-human civilizations just aren't interested in running those ancestor simulations.
Right. Maybe they think it's unethical, like playing God with, digital beings. Or maybe they've just moved on to, more sophisticated pursuits.
Imagine having access to knowledge and technologies beyond our wildest dreams.
Yeah.
They might be exploring the multiverse, unlocking the secrets of dark matter or composing symphonies of pure energy. Simulating their ancestors might just seem like a trivial distraction at that point.
Right. It's like, why bother recreating your childhood home in Minecraft when you can build entire worlds from scratch? So this proposition, it really makes us rethink what it actually means to be, advanced or intelligent. Maybe our human desires and motivations are just a tiny blip on the radar of a truly advanced intelligence.
Precisely. But we can't forget about that third possibility, the really mind-bending one. The possibility that we are, in fact, living in a simulation. And if that's the case, well, it just throws everything we think we know about everything right out the window.
Okay, let's go down that rabbit hole for a bit. If we are just lines of code in some massive computer program, does that mean our lives are meaningless? Are our choices even real?
That's where things get philosophically tricky. But here's the thing. Even if we're in a simulation, the laws of physics, as we experience them, the relationships we build, the experiences we have, they're all real to us. They have a real impact on our lives, even if the underlying reality is something different than what we perceive it to be.
So it's like the simulation wouldn't work if it wasn't internally consistent. The rules of the game, whatever they are, still apply, even if it's all just a game.
Exactly. The rules of the simulation, whatever they are, they govern our existence within it. In a sense, the simulation bias our reality, even if it's not the ultimate reality.
Okay, that makes sense, but it still kind of messes with my head. So if we can't really tell for sure whether or not we're in a simulation, does it even matter? Should we just go on living our lives as if nothing's different?
It might not change our day-to-day lives all that much, but it could definitely change how we think about the universe and our place in it. It opens up all sorts of new scientific and philosophical questions.
Like what?
Well, for instance, if we are in a simulation, what does that tell us about the beings who created it? What are their motives? Are there limits to this simulation?
Right. Are there like glitches in the matrix? Could we hack the system, or are we just along for the ride?
Exactly. And it also makes you wonder, could there be simulations within simulations?
Hmm.
Like an endless loop of realities all nested inside each other?
Whoa, that's getting a little too meta, even for me. But it does show just how complex reality, or maybe I should say realities, could actually be. Speaking of complex concepts, let's talk about Bostrom's bland indifference principle.
Okay.
It sounds kind of boring, but I have a feeling it's anything but.
You're right. It's definitely more interesting than the name might suggest. It basically means that if we don't have any specific reason to believe that our experiences are special or unique, we should assume our chances of being in a simulation are about the same as anyone else's.
Okay, I need an example here. Analogies are like my love language.
All right, imagine there's this rare genetic marker that exists in, let's say, 1% of the population. If you don't know anything about your own genetic makeup, you wouldn't have any reason to believe that you're more or less likely to have that marker than anyone else,
Okay.
right? You'd assume there's about a 1% chance you have it.
Okay, I get that. So applying that to the simulation argument, if we don't know how common these simulations are, we should just assume we've got the same odds of being in one as anyone else in the universe.
Exactly. And if a significant percentage of beings with human-like experiences are actually in simulations, well, that would mean that our own chances of being simulated beings are higher too.
Okay, I think I'm starting to wrap my head around it, but all this talk about simulations, it makes me wonder, what if these, post-human simulators, what if they aren't interested in recreating entire civilizations? What if they're just focused on specific aspects of reality?
That's an interesting idea. Bostrom does briefly touch on the concept of what he calls selective simulations, where only certain elements are actually fully rendered in detail, and everything else is just kind of like shadows, placeholders,
Mm.
not fully simulated. Think of it like a highlight reel of reality, focusing only on certain moments or aspects of human experience.
So, like, maybe they're only interested in simulating the development of human consciousness or the evolution of language, or maybe just one specific Tuesday afternoon when something historically important happened and everything else is just background noise.
Exactly. And those simulated moments, they could feel completely real to the beings experiencing them, even if the world around them isn't fully fleshed out.
Hmm. It makes you wonder what aspects of our reality might be simulated. Are we all just living out our greatest hits while everything else just fades away? And if so, who's deciding what those highlights are?
That raises a whole other set of questions about the potential for manipulation within a simulation. What if our memories or experiences are being curated, edited, even fabricated by these unseen simulators?
Okay, hold on. Are we veering into conspiracy theory territory here? Is this how we end up talking about lizard people and the Illuminati?
Uh-huh. Let's not get too carried away.
Uh-huh.
But it is fascinating to think about the possibilities. Bostrom even suggests a rather unconventional solution to the problem of evil.
The problem of evil. Okay, now you've got my attention. Tell me more.
What if what if there's no actual suffering in the world? What if all the terrible things we see and experience, the pain, the loss, the injustice, are just illusions, implanted memories designed to make this simulation feel more real, or maybe to serve some other purpose we can't even comprehend?
Okay, that is a mind-blowing concept, but also a little disturbing, right? I mean, it would be nice to think that all the bad stuff isn't real, but wouldn't that make all the good stuff meaningless too? If we're just puppets in some big cosmic play, do our choices even matter?
It's a paradox, isn't it? If nothing is truly good or bad, then what's the point of anything? But again, this is all speculation of the thought experiment to stretch our minds and see things from different angles.
Right, right. It's like we're trying to solve a puzzle, but the pieces don't quite fit together. But that's part of what makes it so interesting, isn't it? The mystery, the uncertainty, the possibility that we may never have all the answers.
It's definitely a journey, and one that's likely to continue for a long, long time. But before we get too lost in the weeds of simulated realities and all these philosophical puzzles, I think it's important to step back and ground ourselves for a moment.
Yeah, good idea. My head's starting to spin a little bit.
Even if we are living in a simulation, it doesn't necessarily change how we should live our lives. The relationships we form, the choices we make, the impact we have on the world around us, those things still matter, regardless of the nature of reality itself.
So we shouldn't just give up and say, well, it's all just a simulation anyway, so nothing really matters.
No, not at all. In fact, I'd say the opposite is true. If we are in a simulation, our actions are actually even more significant because we're not just influencing our own lives, we're potentially influencing the simulation itself. We're part of a grand experiment, a cosmic play. And that's pretty amazing when you think about it.
I like that perspective. It's like, even if we're just pawns in some big simulation, we still have the power to make choices, to shape the narrative, to leave our mark on the digital tapestry of existence or whatever.
Exactly. And who knows? Maybe the simulators are watching, taking notes, learning from our experiences. Maybe we're teaching them something about what it means to be human.
Now that's a thought. So instead of worrying about being controlled by the simulation, we could see it as an opportunity to teach the simulator something about ourselves.
Exactly. Our creativity, our compassion, our resilience, our capacity for love and connection, those qualities could be valuable data points for the simulators.
That's a pretty empowering way to look at it. But what about the ethical side of things? If we are in a simulation, doesn't that bring up some concerns about free will, about consent?
Oh, absolutely. Those are valid concerns, and they're questions that philosophers and ethicists are, actively wrestling with. But even if we can't definitively answer those questions, the very act of engaging with them can help us understand ourselves and the world around us better.
So it's less about finding concrete solutions and more about just expanding our awareness and challenging the assumptions we make.
Precisely. The simulation argument, whether you believe it or not, is a catalyst for intellectual exploration and self-reflection. It forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge and to acknowledge the vastness of what we don't know.
And maybe that's the most valuable takeaway from all of this, a renewed sense of humility and a sense of wonder. It reminds us that we're still really just beginning to understand reality, consciousness, and the universe itself.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder that there's always more to learn, more to discover, more to question.
So where do we go from here? What's the next step in this exploration of reality and the possibility of simulation?
I think the key is to stay curious, to keep asking questions, and to be open to new ideas and perspectives. The more we learn about the universe, about consciousness, about the nature of reality itself, the closer we'll get to understanding our place within it, simulated or not.
And maybe, just maybe, we'll even catch a glimpse behind the curtain, a little hint from the simulators themselves.
Or maybe not. Maybe the biggest lesson of the simulation argument is to just embrace the mystery, to accept that there are some things we might never fully understand.
And to find wonder and meaning in the journey itself, no matter where it leads.
Exactly. Because even in a simulated reality, the experience of being alive, of learning, of connecting with others, that's something truly special.
Okay, so we've talked about some pretty crazy ideas, right? Like extinction, super advanced beings who just don't care about us, and then of course the big one, that we're all living in a giant simulation. It's a lot to process.
Yeah, it really makes you question everything you think you know, doesn't it? But even if we can't ever, definitively prove or disprove the simulation hypothesis, I still think it's a really valuable thing to think about.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
So it's not really about finding a concrete answer. It's more about the journey of like exploring these concepts.
Exactly. The simulation argument, whether you buy into it or not, I think it forces us to really grapple with some big questions about consciousness, about reality, about our place in the universe. It encourages us to think critically, to question things.
And maybe even have some fun with it.
Right.
I mean, who doesn't love a good mind-bending thought experiment? But on a more serious note, are there like practical implications to all of this? Like, does the possibility of a simulated reality change how we should approach our lives, our decisions, our relationships?
That's a really good question. And I think the answer is both yes and no. Like on a day-to-day level, the laws of physics still apply, whether we're in a simulation or not. Our relationships still matter. The choices we make still have consequences, within the framework of our reality, whatever that may be.
Right. So it's not like we should just throw our hands up and say, well, it's all a simulation anyway, so nothing matters.
I actually think the opposite is true. If anything, the possibility of a simulated reality makes our actions even more important.
More important, how so?
Think about it this way. If we are in a simulation, our choices aren't just affecting our own lives, they're potentially affecting the simulation itself. We're like part of this grand experiment, contributing to the data set of existence.
Wow, that is a pretty cool way to think about it. So we're not just passive players in somebody else's game. We're actually shaping the narrative of the simulation.
Exactly. And, Who knows? Maybe the simulators, these hypothetical super advanced beings, maybe they are watching us. Maybe they're learning from our behavior, trying to understand what makes humans tick.
So instead of worrying about being like controlled by the simulation, maybe we should think of it as a chance to teach the simulators something about what it means to be human.
Yeah. Our creativity, our compassion, our resilience, even our capacity for love and connection, those qualities could be valuable data points for the simulators.
Okay, I like that. It's a much more positive way to look at it. But what about the ethics of it all? If we really are in a simulation, doesn't that raise some serious questions about free will, about consent?
Those are definitely important questions, and they're questions that philosophers and ethicists are, really struggling with right now. But even if we can't come up with like clear-cut answers, I think the very act of wrestling with these questions can help us understand ourselves and our world, on a deeper level.
So it's not about finding the right answer. It's more about the process of exploring these ideas.
Exactly. I think the simulation argument, regardless of whether it's actually true, it's a really powerful tool for self-reflection and intellectual exploration. It forces us to confront the limits of what we know and acknowledge how much we still don't know.
And maybe that's the most important takeaway from all of this, right? This renewed sense of humility and a sense of wonder. It reminds us that we're really just starting to understand, reality, consciousness, the universe itself.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder that there's always more to learn, more to discover, more to question.
So where do we go from here? What's next for those of us who are, kind of fascinated by all of this? Where can we learn more about these mind-bending ideas about simulated realities?
Well, there are tons of resources out there, books, articles, documentaries, online forums. There are lots of people out there who are exploring these concepts.
And of course, we encourage everyone to check out Nick Bostrom's original paper, Are You Living in a Computer Simulation?
Hmm.
It's a really fascinating read, even if it does leave you with more questions than answers.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe someday we'll find that one piece of evidence, that undeniable glitch in the matrix, that'll either prove or disprove the simulation hypothesis once and for all.
Well, until then, we encourage you to keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep wondering, because even in a world that might be simulated, the pursuit of knowledge and the search for meaning, I think those are definitely things worth doing.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's been a real pleasure diving into this topic with you.
Likewise.
And to all our listeners, thanks for joining us on this journey into the mind-bending world of the simulation hypothesis.
And until next time, keep those minds open, those questions coming, and keep your eyes peeled for any signs that we might actually be living in a computer program. You never know what you might find.